Yes, hello and welcome to the European Report. Let me also say Happy Independence Day to our Israeli friends, Yom Ha'atzmaut. Uh, exactly 73 years ago, according to the Jewish calendar, the Jewish state was declared in Tel Aviv, and this is truly a day to celebrate among friends of Israel and friends of the Jewish people. In this webinar, we are going to do just that by going back to something which has been called the Magna Carta of the Jewish state, not to 1948, but to 1920 and the San Remo Peace Conference. With me in the studio or with me on Zoom today, I have Mikael Oscarsson from Uppsala, Sweden, a member of the Swedish Parliament. My name is Tomas Sandell. I'm the founding director of European Coalition for Israel. We hope to be joined by our friend Senator Lucio Malan from Italy later in the program. This is what happens in this day and age of Zoom when we do not meet up physically and we do not have Lucio Malan with us at this moment, but as I say, we hope that he can join us. If not, we will have a very lively and good conversation with Mikael Oscarsson, as we have had so many times before during our many years of friendship. But speaking about the San Remo resolution, let us take a look back. This is a news report, a video clip that was recorded in 2014 in San Remo, and it gives a background to what happened 101 years ago. Let us watch this video clip from CBN and Chris Mitchell.
We often hear Palestinian supporters refer to the so-called West Bank and half of Jerusalem as occupied territories. They say Israel doesn't have a right to the land. But in one small Italian town, history tells a different story. Here's Chris Mitchell from San Remo, Italy.
Former Israeli President Chaim Weizmann said this picturesque town on the Mediterranean played a crucial role in Israel's modern history.
He said that it's not an exaggeration to say that the Jewish state was born in San Remo.
Following the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War I, leaders of the Allied powers met in San Remo. Their goal? A new Middle East. While most of the land went to the Arab people, the Jewish people received back their ancient homeland. What happened here in San Remo in 1920 transformed the Middle East, and for the first time in nearly 2,000 years, the nations of the world recognized a Jewish homeland.
What is very important to understand is that long before the Holocaust, there was already an agreement that the Jewish people had a right to statehood, they had a right to self-determination, just like any other people groups.
2014 marks the 94th anniversary of the San Remo resolution. Israel also recognizes San Remo as a present-day foundation in its battle for a place among the nations.
Since there is an effort today to question our legitimacy, we have to go back to San Remo and say, look, here is the international document agreed by all members of the League of Nations at the time that says that, yes, we have this right.
And that right provides historical ammunition to fight the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement called BDS. It aims to persuade companies and countries to withdraw money and investments from Israel.
It counters the arguments of the BDS movement to say that, Israel is a colonial power. It is the opposite. Many historians would say that the San Remo resolution also was the beginning of the decolonization process, because here we have a people group that have been occupied for 1,800 years that are finally getting their recognition of statehood.
Sandell adds anyone questioning the modern state of Israel can find the answer in this Italian connection.
When we today have this whole question of, do the Jewish people really belong in Israel? Do they have a legitimate claim to the land? That question was decided once and for all in 1920 under international law here at this very place, San Remo.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, San Remo, Italy.
Well, there we go. There we have a history lesson in 3 minutes about some of the significance of the San Remo Peace Conference. Those who have followed the activities of ECI for many years, you know that this has been very central in everything we do in explaining the legitimacy of the Jewish state. And exactly 1 year ago, we had a live broadcast from Jerusalem to mark the 100th anniversary of the San Remo resolution. But Mikael Oscarsson, if I come over to you and ask you, when did you first hear about the San Remo resolution, and in what way, or has it in any way influenced the way that you today defend the rights of the Jewish people in the Swedish parliament?
Well, actually, to be honest, Thomas, I think actually I heard about this conference and the importance of it through you and through European Coalition for Israel. So because actually there is not much talk about this. It should be, and the importance is there, but it's not very well known. But I think you, Tomas, and the European Coalition for Israel, you've been actually one of the advocates for this and remind us, and it is important. It's a fact, and I think it's very important, and we need to get out of this information, because this is a legal foundation for Israel and also for the Arab countries. But the importance is very much. It's big. It's huge.
We were hoping that you would answer our question exactly in this way, because we have, of course, been very active in the last 11 years, and some of those who have followed our activities, you know that we travel all the way to the Parliament of Japan to convey this same message, because one of the 4 states in San Remo that were part of the Supreme Council of the principal Allied powers, of course, was Japan, together with Italy and France and Britain. So let that also be mentioned in this program. But how do you think one could make this San Remo resolution more well known in the general public, in political circles where you yourself are? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I think it's a lack of information, and I think what I could do is try to put this forward in articles and in debates, and come back that the legal foundation is there, and it was really what they did back in 1920, and it's I think it's really it's a good idea to inform about this, and because it gives strength even today when as was mentioned, the boycott propaganda, so to speak, so the problems and the situation for Israel is still very tough, and the state is questioned, and then it's very important to come back to this agreement.
Yes. As I mentioned in the news clip earlier, I think it's a good argument to point out that what happened 100 years ago was in many ways the beginning of the decolonization process. So exactly the opposite as to what the promoters of BDS are indicating, that the Jews were somehow intruders into Palestine. But and this is why we find these arguments so valid and powerful today, because here we have exactly the opposite. We have a land and a people group that has been illegally occupied for more than 1,800 years, and finally, under this peace conference with the Wilsonian principle of the right for self-determination of people groups, also the right for the Jewish people to recreate or reconstitute their own nation state was codified under international law. Well, one of the reasons why I wanted Mikael to have you on the program, and for that matter also a representative from Italy, is that Italy, by hosting this conference, has of course played a very significant role in paving the way for the creation of the Jewish state. But believe it or not, Sweden has also been in a very central role. And of course, today Sweden is perhaps more known for ABBA and IKEA and I don't know, Skype or Spotify, than being Israel's best friend in Europe. What has happened in the meantime?
Well, actually, as you mentioned, Sweden used to have very good relations with Israel, and when this Sweden was a you know the name of the man? Can you remind me of the name?
Yes, Emil Sandström.
Emil Sandström, yeah. He went around the country and really and he was the one that argued for that there was a need to form a Jewish state. Yes, and he made an important. He was supported by the Swedish state, and then when the Israeli state was born, then the first year, because it was like a sister party to the Swedish Socialist Democratic Party. It was a sister party that had the leadership of Israel, and it was actually very close relation. And in many ways, Swedes were very allied and close, and also give aid to this newborn state. But then, sadly, it changed during late 60s and early 70s, and at the time then they had a prime minister called Olof Palme he kind of turned around and thought it was much more important to have close relations with the Palestinians, and then if we go up to this actual date, we have it's sad to say, but the from Israel they saying that when they send out ambassadors to Sweden, they know that they are going to the toughest country in Europe. That is what they officially say, that Sweden is the toughest country, and we had, now is Ann Linde, that's the foreign minister. Before that was Margot Wallström, and in many ways we've been leading to be upset and the opposite way, and not finding ways to cooperate with Israel, but to being hostile and in many ways doing the wrong thing, and this is sadly what the Israelis know. Think about Sweden. It's not that a country that with close relations, because we have many reasons to go back to this good relation, and in many ways it should be fruitful, and we could play a role in the peace process. But the thing is that we are, in Sweden, we it's very important to say that we fight anti-Semitism, and it is important. It's growing in Sweden and growing in Europe, but it's also important to see that we also need to fight the anti-Semitism in the Middle East. I mean, and Sweden is one of the countries that give the most aid in different ways to Palestine, and we should, I think, Sweden could play a role if we say that we could continue with all this aid if you stop with all this anti-Semitism and the propaganda and the hatred against it's in national Palestine TV and the school books and in Facebook and social media, and because they encourage violence against civilians. And so go back to your question. It was a long answer, but it's I think and I hope that we will get a new foreign minister next year, and I hope from my party, the Christian Democratic Party, from the moderate, we like to restart the relation with Israel again, the only democracy in the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I know, of course, Mikael, that you have been very active in the Swedish Riksdag in raising these issues. So kudos to you for playing that active role. Last month, we had Katarina von Schnobein here in the program, who is the EU coordinator, as you know, in the combat against anti-Semitism. And she mentioned that Sweden is special in one particular way, in that in the surveys that have been made, asking the question about how do you view Israel, Swedes tend to see even their attitudes to the Jewish people are colored through the prism of what happens in the Middle East. And in the case of Sweden, that is the highest percentage. But having mentioned surveys, there was another survey which was released just a few weeks ago from YouGov. And this was very good news, because Israel apparently is having a heyday in Europe, and the attitudes are becoming more and more positive. So say for in the case of France, which would have a very negative view in the past, I think something around 22% viewing Israel from a positive perspective. Now it's up to 34%. And the same is true for Germany and Britain. Why do you think that people tend to be more positive towards Israel right now? And is this a trend that we can expect to continue?
Well, as you said, it's a very, very good change, and I hope that it's not only something that's change and go the opposite way again, but I think it's hard really to point out what's. Do you have a clue yourself?
See, I would say, and I just wrote an article about it, indicating obviously when you look at the rollout plan for vaccinations against COVID-19, Israel again has been this great example of how you can do it quickly and effectively, and of course Sweden has not perhaps been the best in the class in that respect. So Israel gets a lot of positive, news coverage, whereas in the past it was always about the Middle East conflict. And then, of course, you have the Abraham Accords, you have the improving relations to the Arab world. So all of a sudden, Israel is portrayed in a much more nuanced perspective. So I think this is how most people are looking at the situation. But I would personally be a little bit cautious. And as we know, it takes so little to happen in the Middle East for the opinions to shift back again and for a pushback. And as much as Israel has been these leading examples in the fight against the pandemic, at the same time, we see the conspiracy theories that are taking the opposite view and saying, well, this is all to be blamed on Israel. Yeah. So my perspective would be to take this with a little bit of caution, but I think for both of us and for our viewers, it raises the question that, you know, obviously we need to be active in promoting Israel in this way, and where there is now a more positive wind of change. And of course, we can only hope that this would continue. Of course, Sweden will be in the limelight again later in the year, in the autumn, with the Malmö conference on Holocaust remembrance. When we mention great Swedish personalities, earlier in the program, Emil Sandström, we of course think about Raoul Wallenberg, but I would also dare to mention a person from a party, the same party which is now in government, Göran Persson, the former prime minister, who took the initiative 21 years ago to organize this amazing event in Stockholm, which later led up to the creation of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Do you have any thoughts on the upcoming conference in Malmö? Have you personally been involved or consulted by the authorities? Because I know that you are also one of the Swedes that have raised the issue, for example, about the disappearance of Raoul Wallenberg. What are your thoughts about the Malmö conference?
I think it's a very good idea, and I support it, and I've been the organizer of the Holocaust Remembrance Day in 20. What is the date now? In January
27.
27.
Yes.
Now for 15 years, and I was I led this year too with the Prime Minister speaking, and we were on national TV, and I think it's very important to continue the work, because still today there is people that really deny what happened, and when 6 million Jews were murdered during the Nazis and at that time, and I think it's now it's also a time when there is not very many people left that could tell with eyewitnesses of what happened, and I think it's very. I've been myself organizing 5 different trips together with parliamentarians. We've been together about 100 Swedish parliamentarians that went to Poland and to Auschwitz and other camps, death camps, and I think it's very important to go there yourself and it's. So I think it's what started with. I think you're right. You're a person made a very good job in this issue, but I think it's important to continue, because every generation needs to be one and to understand what's happening and not to forget.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We are coming to the close, believe it or not, in the program, and this only shows how inspiring it always is to meet up and talk with you. We often meet in the cafeteria in the Swedish Riksdag, and this time we do it with an audience. But one question that remains in the back of my mind, considering the work that you have been involved with, comes back to Raoul Wallenberg, this amazing Swede whose famous briefcase is portrayed just outside of the UN headquarters in New York. And according to some estimates, he may have saved as many as 100,000 Hungarian Jews from the Nazis. But the question remains, what did really happen? My question to you is more this: do you believe that we could ever get an answer to this question that still bothers us ever since 1945 when he disappeared? Do you think it's realistic to think that the archives would open and the Russian authorities would cooperate with the Swedish authorities and other researchers so that we could one day say for real that this is what happened?
Yes, I think so, but it takes backbone, and it takes effort. It takes, it's so many times through the years since then he was captured that this from the Sweden side we not been doing what we should. We not been acting like we actually want him to come back. And this is really that his relatives still today is wondering, and together with a lot of Swedes and peoples around the world, wondering what happened. And there is still a lot of paper not released from the Russian authorities, and we need to continue to put pressure. What happened? Because we know now that we have this prisoner that was interviewed for several hours, and now we have it's clear that it was Raoul Wallenberg, and he was interviewed this prisoner several days after he was officially dead, and this really indicates that it's so many lies about what happened, and we need to continue. He's as you said, he's a hero. He did fantastic job, but we need to continue to work with this and really try to find out what happened, and we owe him that, so to speak, and his family, and because this is a question that really people are involved in Swedes, but all over the world, and he was, as you said, he's very well known after Winston Churchill. He's number 2 of being membership of American United States, and it's the honor what do you call it?
Honorary citizen.
Yes, but we have to continue with efforts to get the truth.
On a personal note, maybe I put my hope in a new Swedish government and a new foreign minister, and let us hope that foreign minister would be Mikael Oscarsson.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mikael, so much for your time today and for a very interesting discussion. This is the European Report, and we have been today celebrating Israeli Independence Day, going back to what happened in San Remo already 101 years ago. And you can learn more about what we do on our website, ec4i.org, where you can also watch this program or other European reports. You will also find educational material about the San Remo resolution. There you can also sign up if you want to receive our newsletter. But for today, we say thank you and goodbye, and we are looking forward to see you again next month with a new theme and with new panelists. Thank you, Mikael, and thank you, viewers. Goodbye.
Thank you, Tomas. Bye-bye.